This is the OHM XU700 LS, and the LS stands for low step, as you can see here. And that makes it easier to hop on the bike, stand over the bike, and just control it. It does come in 3 sizes, which is nice: 15-inch, 17-inch, and 19-inch. And even though it's low step, you know, one of the things that I noticed and got feedback on from the new wheel here in San Francisco, this is one of their bikes, is that it's really reinforced here. They got extra tubing right there at the step-through point, and it even extends. It's almost like a second chain rail, I guess. It's almost like, you know, you've got seat stays, chain stays, and it's like an extra chain stay or something. And it does feel really stiff. This is hydroformed aluminum alloy frame, just meant to give you less of that flexy kind of crack the whip feel, because this is a fairly rear heavy bike. You can see that the motor and the battery are both mounted towards the back. But before I get too far, I want to call out these nice Welgo aluminum alloy platform pedals, Pletcher, full-length kickstand. We've got these awesome fenders, which are plastic, but they're double reinforced with like 2 rails, which is nice. Just keeps them straighter. They don't rub as much. There's actually pretty good distance on this back one. You know, I really get bummed when I'm like riding along and you get rear because the because the fenders go out, because fenders are super useful, you know, especially if you live somewhere that gets rainy and you know, you want to keep yourself kind of clean. The tire size on these is really unique. It's 27.5, so it's kind of that 650B, in between 26 and 28, which is equivalent to kind of the 700C, and they're 2 inches in diameter, so extra thick. That's going to give you some cushion as you're riding, along with this, you know, it's kind of basic SR Suntour NCX suspension fork. It does have lockout, which is nice, but not a lot of adjustment beyond that. It's just kind of like a spring suspension there. Cables are all internally routed, and I love that they've actually got kind of, you know, bottle bosses right there. So you can add a bottle cage, you could add a little mini pump maybe if you wanted to, a lock, and then you've got this rack, which is really, you know, really sturdy feeling. You see that it's like oversized tubing here on the support arms, but then they use standard gauge tubing up here, and there's plenty of places to clip on panniers if you want, or put a little saddlebag, and it surrounds the battery, which does lock to the frame. It's a removable battery, so you could take it off, and I would recommend that, especially when you're transporting or storing the battery, charging it, that kind of thing, because, you know, again, kind of rear heavy. It's probably going to be a little difficult to hang this off of car racks anyway, and thankfully there is a quick release on the front wheel, so that helps. We've got hydraulic disc brakes, Tektro Aruga E-Sub, 180 millimeter rotors on the front, 160 millimeter rotors on the back, and that's kind of cool. You know, really good stopping power. It's important when you're going really fast. Looks like a SRAM Via Centro derailleur, and then 10-speed cassette with rapid fire shifters up here and a nice little readout window. This is how you control the pedal assist. And it's actually got a throttle, which is really cool. So I'll explain that a little more as we get closer. You know, okay, you know, grips here, they're kind of ergonomic, but they don't have lockers, so they could kind of twist if you really bear down hard. And I like that the stem on this is a little more upright, and that we've got sort of a low riser bar, because it gives you more of an upright, relaxed feel. You know, you can imagine sitting there and not having to lean forward and strain your back or neck quite as much. So I definitely like that kind of a setup. This could be a great sort of a commuter bike, you know, around town type of setup. The motor is pretty solid. BionX does a lot of gearless direct drive hub motors, and they tend to be really quiet, really smooth, and they use torque sensing technology, so the harder you push, the more power you're going to get, and that means that it's a little bit more of an active ride. It's got regenerative braking, which is awesome. That helps you to recoup some of the energy, but one of the downsides is that if you're just riding this with no power, there's a little bit more drag, because the motor magnets and stuff are kind of repelling in there compared to a geared hub motor that might have freewheeling. So this is a 350 watt motor. It's actually a BionX P 350 RL. So the P series is a little bit older, which, you know, they've kind of upgraded it and made them a little bit lighter since then, but part of making it lighter is they took out some of the copper windings, and that means that it's maybe a little less torquey, like a little less power at sometimes. And so the new wheel was telling me that they like this bike because around here, you got these big hills in San Francisco, and they like the extra power. I've ridden both motors, and it's hard to compare and contrast with so much time between each visit. But this one's working great for me right now. I definitely like it, and this bike overall is really fairly affordable. It's like $28.99, so you're getting a pretty solid system here. Especially you consider that this is actually one of the new BionX batteries here. It's 48 volts, 6.6 amp hours. So that may not sound super huge in terms of amp hours, but 48 volts is gonna really give you extra power for making that motor work, and it totally does. Got a light in the rear built right into the battery, and there's also an optional headlight for extra safety that could be wired in, which is nice. So a lot of good accessories all around with this bike. It weighs about 50 pounds, but again, a lot of that weight is kind of towards the rear end of the bike. And there still is a little bit of crack the whip when you're riding. It's just not as severe as some of the cheaper bikes. Also, this is a 30.9 millimeter seat tube. In case you want to smooth out the ride even more, you could add like a thud buster or something like that. And I believe it's just 300 millimeters tall. And one of the other quick call outs here is this nice sort of hollow spindle bottom bracket. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit stiffer, because the bearings are sort of outboard. They're like external bearings, so there's less tubing that's extruding from this bottom bracket that can kind of bend. So it's just a stiffer, it's a higher performance setup here. We've got a nice aluminum alloy bash guard, a little bit of a chain guide on top. I'm really impressed with this. There's no chain guard, but your pants, they should be somewhat protected by this ring and that little plastic piece there. Definitely cool to see that. Now is probably a good time to do a little test ride. To turn this bike on, you basically just insert the battery pack, make sure it's all charged up, and then press on the display. But before we do that, I want to show that the display is actually removable. And that's cool because, if it gets rainy out or maybe you're parking somewhere that's a little bit less safe, you could take this in with you, just, slip it in your pocket, no problem. And then when you're back at the bike, you can pop it on pretty easily here. Whoops. There we go. Clicks, and then you just press that button here and everything kind of comes to life. So first thing you see is your speed up there, and then you've got these 4 bars on the left, 4 bars on the right. Your battery indicator, which is pretty nice. It's got a lot of bars there, so you get finer increments, and then the sort of other display at the bottom. You can cycle through those by pressing this second button here. So we've got distance right now, odometer, chrono, average speed, clock, and then back to distance. And now from here, you can use these right buttons to go into regen. As I was mentioning, it does have regeneration, which is very cool. Save your brakes on those downhills and recoup some of your power. Or assist, 4 levels of assist. And I love that they've kind of externalized those same plus and minus buttons here. Real easy to reach from that right grip, as well as that throttle. I love the throttle. Not every pedal assist bike has throttle, especially the ones with the fancier like torque sensing and all that. But it's just nice. Sometimes you just want to power through a puddle and pick your feet up or get started if you're in the wrong gear. And I love that. Now this system isn't going to be as efficient as like a mid-drive bike that's leveraging your cassette and getting sort of a mechanical advantage. But the cool thing about it is that at any speed, it just feels zippier. It's like, you just straight away, you go. And again, it's fairly quiet. So I'm going to do some riding and I'll get some different shots. I am in kind of a hilly section here, so I'm just going to start off with the throttle and climb the hill. Doing pretty well, it's like 7 miles per hour. I haven't pedaled at all, and we're definitely going up a hill here in San Francisco. Very, very nice, and just so quiet. Now this time I'm going to pedal. We're looking at a pretty major hill in front of us. Pretty comfortable here. It's got that good seating position I was talking about. And we are in full pedal assist right now. And I'm not really having to stand up, and my knees are feeling pretty good. So, you know, that's what it's meant to do. Now I'm going to demonstrate regen. And this is totally when you'd want to use it. I mean, look at that. There's a lot of energy potential. We've got a lot of like stored mechanical energy here. We want to convert that back to electricity. So I'm arrowing down, all the way down. Probably still going to have to use my brakes a little bit so we don't get carried away. But here we go. Look at that. See, we'd be really blasting if we didn't have regen going. And now we stop. Very cool. And now I'm trying to pedal with regen, and you can clearly see it's slowing me down. Gotta love it. Whew. Well, that's the OHM XU700 low step. For under $3,000, I mean, this is a solid bike. Definitely have fun testing these low steps and kind of feeling the frame stiffness. It's cool to see something that's a little more overbuilt like this. Yes, it's a little bit heavier, but not bad considering all the rack and fenders. There's going to be some variation between the frame sizes and stuff, but it's a solid bike. I love what they're doing. OHM's been around for a while, and they sort of use, you know, other people's drive systems, and then they make the frames, and they put together these really great, you know, different models. So for getting around town, this would be really comfortable, and I feel like with regen you'd get a decent range. And I love the reflective sidewalls there. Again, just nice to have those options for lights and stuff. It's a solid bike. So for the full write-up on this and other OHM reviews, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. If I missed something, just hit me up with a video response, leave some comments, or maybe I'll see you in the forums. And ride safe. Cheers.